I flipped open the lid of the bento box. The aroma of teriyaki chicken rose warmly from inside. But instantly, an icy chill ran down my spine. The nose of a man who had hunted poisons for 30 years could not be fooled. Hidden beneath that rich sauce was a faint scent. Bitter almonds. So subtle yet deadly. This was the bento box my daughter-in-law had accidentally handed to me, the one she had prepared for my son. That simple mistake revealed a dark scheme so horrifying that it nearly stopped my heart. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a glass of water, a few snacks, make yourself comfortable, and remember the people in these stories always had every opportunity to do the right thing. They simply chose otherwise. Leave a comment with the number 1 so we can continue the story, and hit subscribe. You're going to enjoy this one. My name is Arthur Freeman. 30 years as a toxicology specialist for the Drug Enforcement Administration taught me one thing. Poisons never lie. People do. It was an ordinary Tuesday at the community center. Victoria, my seemingly perfect daughter-in-law, hurried past me. She handed me a bento box and flashed a sweet smile. "Dad, don't forget to eat lunch." Then she drove away. It was the lunch she had prepared for Ethan, my son. She had simply given it to the wrong person. When I opened the container, Martha, a retired nurse sitting beside me, frowned and leaned closer. "Arthur, am I imagining things? This smells like some kind of strong cleaning chemical." I looked at her. My face hardened. No, not a cleaning chemical. Arsenic trioxide. Extremely toxic, colorless, and odorless to most people. But to me it smells like death. My heart pounded. Why was this in my son's food? Lately Ethan had been complaining about severe stomach pain. He had been losing weight rapidly. I had assumed the stress from work was wearing him down. But no, the enemy was not somewhere out there. The enemy was inside his own home. The enemy was cooking his meals every single day. Heat rushed through my face. My aging hands trembled with rage. But the discipline of an old soldier pulled me back from the edge. I could not panic. I needed evidence. I pulled out my phone and checked the GPS tracker on Ethan's vehicle. A red dot moved across Interstate 95. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. The car's speed was dropping sharply. Damn it. The poison had already begun to take effect. He had eaten the breakfast she made for him. I shot to my feet. I sprinted to my car. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine roared. "Ethan, hold on. Dad's coming." The speedometer needle on my dashboard pointed straight at 100 miles per hour. Tires screamed against the asphalt of Interstate 95. Cold sweat streamed down my temples. Every nerve in my body felt stretched to the breaking point. The red GPS dot on my phone had stopped moving. It sat motionless on a deserted stretch beside the highway. 5 minutes. I had exactly 5 minutes to get there. In toxicology, 5 minutes is the line between life and death. Once arsenic trioxide enters the bloodstream, it attacks the digestive system and the central nervous system. It crushes its victim's heart from the inside out. My Ethan was alone in that vehicle. My son was facing death. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The car shot forward like an arrow. Finally, Ethan's black SUV appeared in the distance. It was parked crookedly near the median barrier. The hazard lights flashed repeatedly in the fading evening light. I slammed on the brakes. My car skidded to a stop, leaving behind a trail of burning rubber. I threw open the door and ran. I sprinted toward the SUV. The moment I looked through the window, my heart nearly stopped. Ethan was curled up in the driver's seat. His face had turned gray. His eyes were rolled back. Foam dripped from his mouth. His fingers were twisted and rigid like dried branches. He was convulsing violently. I yanked the door handle. Locked. I pounded on the glass. "Ethan, listen to me, son." No response. Only a faint choking sound escaped his throat. There was no time left. I ran back to my car and grabbed the tire iron from the trunk. Then I charged back to the SUV. Every ounce of strength a 60-year-old man possessed flowed into my arms. I swung. Crash! The rear window exploded into thousands of shards. I reached through the opening, unlocked the door, and pulled Ethan's heavy body onto the grass beside the highway. He had stopped breathing. The pulse in his neck was barely there, weak and uneven. I dropped to my knees immediately. I locked my hands together and placed them on his chest. I began chest compressions. I leaned down and breathed air into his lungs. Then compressions again. My fingernails dug into my palms. My entire body trembled with fear. But I could not stop. I was a Freeman. I was the shield of this family. Suddenly, Ethan gasped. A violent cough burst from his chest. He vomited onto the grass. His body shook uncontrollably before his eyes slowly opened. They were cloudy with pain and terror. Dad. It hurts so much. My stomach feels like it's on fire. I grabbed his trembling shoulders and held him tightly. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, but I forced them back. I'm here. You're going to be safe. I pulled out my phone and called for an ambulance. While we waited, I stared at the empty vehicle. The fear inside me began transforming into something else. Rage. Pure rage. Victoria. That cruel woman had planned everything. She wanted this to look like a natural medical emergency. A sudden collapse. An unfortunate tragedy. I clenched my fists so tightly that my skin split. Leaning close to Ethan, I whispered, I know what's happening. They're going to pay. In the distance, the sirens of an ambulance began to wail. I knew I had pulled Ethan back from death's grasp for now. But this was only the beginning. Victoria did not just want Ethan dead. She had prepared an even more terrifying trap, and it was already waiting for us at the hospital. The wail of the ambulance siren tore through the quiet night surrounding the city hospital. Ethan was rushed into the emergency room on a blood-stained gurney. I ran beside him, gripping his ice-cold hand. Doctors bombarded me with questions about his condition. I answered without hesitation. He's suffering from acute arsenic poisoning. I need you to begin gastric decontamination and intravenous treatment immediately. But the moment the emergency room doors swung shut, a fake sob echoed from behind me. Oh my God, what happened to Ethan? Victoria rushed toward us. She was dressed in an expensive designer dress. Her makeup was flawless. A few carefully manufactured tears clung to the corners of her eyes. She looked at me with barely concealed hatred. The head physician stepped out of the treatment room. Victoria immediately intercepted him. She grabbed his hand. Doctor, please save my husband. His health has been getting worse lately. I spun toward her and roared. Shut up, Victoria. You poisoned him. I have proof. Victoria did not panic. She sighed dramatically and turned toward the doctor with an expression of sympathy. You see, doctor, I told you this would happen. My father-in-law has stage 2 Alzheimer's disease. His delusions have become severe, and he's increasingly aggressive. He attacks me without reason and imagines things that never happened. I froze. My blood boiled. What did you just say? I'm a DEA toxicology specialist. I am not insane. Doctor, you have to believe me. Victoria calmly reached into her purse and pulled out a document. She slapped it onto the nurse's station counter. This is Ethan's medical proxy. He signed it 3 months ago. I am his lawful wife. I have full authority over his medical treatment and over who may have access to him while he is unconscious. Then she pointed directly at me. Doctor, I demand that this confused old man be removed from the hospital. He is a danger to my husband. The head physician studied the legal document. Then he looked at me with regret in his eyes. Sir, I'm sorry. We are required to follow the law. I must ask you to leave. 2 large security guards approached. They twisted my arms behind my back and forced me down the hallway while strangers watched with judgment in their eyes. I struggled furiously. Let me go. You're protecting a murderer. Ethan will die if you let her stay near him. No one listened. They threw me out through the hospital's glass entrance like a bag of garbage. I crashed onto the cold stone steps outside. Rain began pouring from the night sky. The downpour mixed with the helpless tears of a father. My dear audience, can you imagine the fury I felt in that moment? The person responsible was inside. She held my son's life in her hands. And I, the only person who knew the truth, had been thrown into the street. I slowly pushed myself to my feet and wiped the rain from my face. I looked up at the brightly lit windows of the intensive care unit. The pain in my eyes disappeared. In its place came something colder, sharper, like a blade. Victoria thought she had won by forcing an old man out of a hospital. She had no idea she had just pushed me into becoming something far more dangerous. She had blocked every legitimate path available to me. But she had forgotten one thing: how dangerous a veteran DEA field specialist could become when cornered. I turned away from the hospital and disappeared into the darkness. I already knew my next move. I was going to enter her house. I was going to find evidence she could never explain away. Tonight, I would become a ghost inside my own son's home. The rain grew heavier with every passing minute. Ethan's mansion sat silent in an affluent suburban neighborhood. Every light inside was dark. I stood beneath the shadow of a large oak tree and checked my watch. Exactly 11 o'clock at night. Victoria was almost certainly still at the hospital playing the role of the grieving wife. This was my only chance. I moved quickly across the rain-soaked lawn. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out a spare key. Ethan had given it to me when he and Victoria first bought the house. A soft click echoed in the darkness. The oak front door opened slightly. Immediately, a rapid series of beeps erupted from the security system. The alarm had begun its countdown. I had 30 seconds before the system automatically alerted the authorities. 30 seconds. For an old man, I rushed through the dark living room without turning on a single light. The glow from the electronic security panel illuminated the countdown. 25. 20. Rainwater and sweat streamed down my face. I quickly entered the security code. My birthday. Ethan had always used it as a password. Click. The warning beeps stopped. A green light appeared. I released a long breath. My son had never stopped loving me. I pulled a pair of specialized rubber gloves from my pocket. 30 years with the DEA had turned precautions like this into instinct. I could not leave fingerprints. I could not allow Victoria to use the legal system against me before I saved Ethan. Switching on a small flashlight, I headed directly into the kitchen. The room was immaculate, modern, beautiful. But to me, it looked like a factory of death. I opened an expensive spice cabinet. My flashlight settled on a luxury glass jar labeled Himalayan pink salt. I unscrewed the lid and carefully smelled its contents. There it was again. That familiar scent. Bitter almonds. The smell of arsenic. She had mixed the poison into the salt itself. Every meal. Every day. No wonder Ethan had been deteriorating so slowly that nobody suspected foul play. I removed a small plastic evidence bag and carefully transferred a spoonful of the salt inside. Evidence number 1. I continued searching the cabinets. Behind several premium tea containers, I discovered an unlabeled pouch of dried herbs. I poured a few leaves into my palm. Digitalis purpurea, foxglove, a plant capable of causing fatal cardiac complications in high doses. Victoria had done her homework. The combination of arsenic and digitalis could create what appeared to be a perfect natural medical collapse. A murder weapon without a blade. I sealed several leaves inside a second evidence bag. Evidence number 2. I tightened my grip around both bags. Disgust surged through me. This woman was a monster. I needed to get these samples back to the laboratory beneath my house immediately. Then bright headlights swept across the living room windows. My heart nearly stopped. A familiar engine pulled into the driveway. Victoria's Mercedes. My pulse thundered in my ears. High heels clicked sharply against the front steps. Then came the unmistakable sound of a key sliding into the lock. Damn it! The front door was still unlocked. I could not leave that way. I could not climb through a window without triggering the motion sensors. The front door opened. Victoria was inside. There was no escape. I scanned the kitchen and spotted the nearby guest bedroom. Moving as quietly as possible, I slipped inside and dove into a large wooden wardrobe. I pulled the door almost shut. Darkness swallowed me. I held my breath and listened. Victoria's footsteps were getting closer. Much closer. But then I heard something that sent a chill through my entire body. She was not alone. Another set of footsteps entered the house. A man's footsteps. Then came a low laugh. A stranger's laugh. The two of them were walking directly toward the room where I was hiding. The scent of pine wood and camphor filled the wardrobe. The cramped space was suffocating. I stood perfectly still, gripping the evidence bags tightly in my hands. Through the narrow gap in the closet door, the bedroom lights suddenly flicked on. Victoria entered. Christian followed close behind her. The handsome lover wore a smug grin as he wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. There was not the slightest trace of concern in Victoria's behavior. Her husband was lying in intensive care, yet she looked completely carefree. She tossed her expensive handbag onto the bed and laughed softly. Christian pulled her down onto the mattress. "When does that idiot finally die?" he asked lazily. Watching him convulse in that car was already getting annoying. Victoria stroked her lover's chest. Her voice was cold, heartless. "Soon, sweetheart. No need to rush." She smiled. "My attorney says all we have to do is keep him alive in a vegetative state for 90 days. After those 90 days, I'll complete the legal process and take control of the entire company." She laughed. "Right now, he's nothing more than a piñata filled with money. We can take our time hitting it until the cash falls out. Once everything belongs to me, I'll sign the order to remove life support." She leaned closer. "After that, you can have all the money you want." Christian burst out laughing and kissed her neck. "You're evil, Victoria." His grin widened. "But I like that." Hidden in the darkness, my entire body trembled. Their words cut through me like knives. They treated my son's life as a joke. To them, Ethan was nothing more than a source of money. The cruelty, the sheer inhumanity. Victoria had crossed every line imaginable. My blood boiled. Part of me wanted to charge out of the closet and break both of their necks with my bare hands. But the discipline of an old soldier held me in place. I took a slow breath. The shield had to remain steady. If I revealed myself now, Victoria would call the police and have me arrested for unlawful entry. The toxicology evidence in my possession would disappear. I would lose everything. And Ethan would die. I had to endure. I had to survive long enough to expose this monster in the light of day. A few moments later, Christian stood up and headed toward the bathroom. That was my chance. While he was gone and Victoria was busy reviewing paperwork at the desk, I moved. Slowly, silently, I eased open the wardrobe door. My feet crossed the thick carpet without making a sound. I slipped through the room, across the living room, then out through the back door like a ghost. Cold wind and driving rain slammed into my face. I ran to my car. The engine roared to life. Moments later, I was racing through the darkness. I had the toxicology evidence. I knew about their 90-day plan. The emergency guardianship hearing for Victoria was scheduled for the next day. I would use everything I had gathered to destroy her in court, but I had underestimated just how cunning Victoria truly was. She had not limited her schemes to poison hidden in a kitchen. She had prepared another devastating attack, one waiting inside the courtroom itself, a flawless performance designed by her own hand, a performance meant to turn me into a madman in the eyes of the law, and strip away every weapon I had left. The county courthouse was packed that morning. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, and the scent of legal paperwork. I sat at the counsel table, my hand gripping a leather briefcase that contained the 2 toxicology samples. I was confident that I would finally expose that evil woman. Victoria entered the courtroom, dressed in an elegant black outfit. Her head was lowered. She repeatedly dabbed her eyes with a tissue, performing the role of a devastated wife. 2 of the city's most prominent attorneys walked beside her. The judge struck the gavel and opened the emergency hearing. My attorney rose first. He presented concerns regarding Victoria's suspicious involvement in Ethan's declining condition. I stood ready to submit the toxicology evidence. But Victoria's legal team moved faster. "Your Honor," one of her attorneys began, "we have evidence that Arthur Freeman is suffering from severe mental instability. He has repeatedly harassed and threatened our client." A large screen inside the courtroom suddenly lit up. A video began to play. It showed me smashing the window of Ethan's SUV on Interstate 95 with a tire iron. The footage had been carefully edited. It only showed the violent-looking moments. The video omitted Ethan's medical crisis. It omitted the poisoning. It omitted the fact that I was trying to save his life. Instead, it showed me breaking the glass, dragging Ethan from the vehicle, and repeatedly pressing on his chest. Then the video shifted to footage from the hospital the previous night. There, I was shouting at doctors. The editing transformed my desperate attempts to save my son into what looked like a dangerous outburst. My professional warnings had been turned into the ramblings of a paranoid old man. I shot to my feet. "That's a lie." My fist slammed against the table. "I was saving my son. She poisoned him with arsenic." Immediately, Victoria covered her face and burst into tears. "Your Honor, please protect me and Ethan. He's lost his mind. He's trying to destroy us." The judge stared at me sternly. His gavel struck repeatedly. "Order. Order in the courtroom." He fixed his eyes on me. "Mr. Arthur Freeman, the video evidence is clear. You do not hold a medical license in this state, and your actions appear dangerously aggressive. The gavel came down again. Its sharp crack echoed through the courtroom. The court hereby orders Arthur Freeman to remain 100 yards away from Ethan Freeman and Victoria Freeman. This order is effective immediately. The judge continued. Temporary authority over all medical decisions and relevant financial matters is granted to Victoria Freeman. The room seemed to spin around me. I collapsed back into my chair. Victoria had manipulated the legal system perfectly. My legal right to protect my son had been stripped away. As court officers escorted me toward the exit, I turned back one final time. Victoria was watching me. She was no longer crying. The tears had vanished. In their place was a cold smile. A victorious smile. A challenge. If you've stayed with us this far, then this story has probably kept your attention. Please do us a quick favor and hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment with the number 5 so I know you've made it this far, and tell me how you think this story will end. Let's see if your prediction is right. A lot of people watch without doing it, but it costs nothing and means a great deal to us. Outside the courthouse, the sun blazed overhead, yet I felt cold to the core. Victoria believed a 100-yard restraining order would stop me. She was wrong. She had just awakened the darkest part of a former DEA agent. If the law refused to stand beside me, then I would create my own rules of engagement. I would return to the laboratory beneath my house. The old hunter's pursuit was only beginning, and this time I would be armed with the most advanced tools at my disposal. The secret basement beneath my house glowed with the cold blue light of laboratory equipment. I removed my courtroom suit and slipped into the familiar white lab coat. The centrifuge hummed to life. The spectrometry system powered on. Tonight, I was no longer an old man humiliated by a courtroom. I was a DEA toxicologist returning to his sanctuary. I poured the sample of pink salt recovered from Ethan's house into a test tube. A few drops of reagent followed. The solution immediately turned a deep lemon-yellow color. Exactly as I had expected, a high concentration of arsenic trioxide. Next, I analyzed the dried herbal sample. Numbers surged across the computer screen. High-dose dioxin compounds extracted from Digitalis purpurea. Combined together, the two substances could silently destroy cardiac muscle cells over time. Victoria had calculated everything with terrifying precision. Every milligram. Every dose. She was an educated killer. I stared at the data, scrolling across the monitor. A cold feeling settled deep inside me. Then the secure phone rang. The sound shattered the silence. It was Logan. 10 years earlier, I had saved the brilliant young hacker's life during a border investigation. His voice came through the speaker, urgent and excited. "Arthur, I got into the mansion's cloud storage system." I straightened immediately. "Tell me, you were right." Victoria deleted every kitchen security recording from the last 10 days. But she didn't know Ethan's smart security system automatically created a hidden backup on the company's cloud server. My pulse quickened. I recovered everything. A file appeared on my computer screen. The video began to play. The timestamp read 6:30 in the morning, 3 days earlier. Victoria stood alone in the kitchen. She wore an expensive satin nightgown. Calmly, she crushed several white tablets using a small mortar and pestle. Then she poured the powder into Ethan's strawberry smoothie. She stirred it carefully, tasted a small sip, and smiled. A satisfied smile. Moments later, she carried the drink upstairs to her husband. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. There it was, the evidence. Undeniable. The camera had captured the entire poisoning. The monster's mask had finally been ripped away. Logan spoke again. "Arthur, should I send this straight to the police?" I shook my head. My voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. "No." Logan fell silent. "If the police get this now, her attorneys will fight for bail. She still controls Ethan's medical decisions. The first thing she'll do is remove life support and eliminate the only witness who can expose her." I paused. "We play this the way she plays it. We destroy her where she feels safest." My eyes shifted toward the calendar on my desk. Tomorrow night marked the 10th anniversary gala of Ethan's company. Victoria planned to finalize the sale of the company's controlling shares during the celebration. 500 influential guests would be there. Investors, executives, politicians, business leaders. She wanted a perfect victory. A perfect public triumph. I intended to turn that triumph into the grave of her career and her freedom. I stood and began organizing the evidence containers. But before any of that could happen, I needed to see Ethan. The court's 100-yard restraining order still hung over me. Victoria's people had locked down the hospital. Security was everywhere. Getting inside would be nearly impossible. Almost. Tonight I was going to enter the intensive care unit. I was going to reach my son, and I would do it using the most reckless and dangerous plan of my entire life. 1 o'clock in the morning. The central hospital was buried in an eerie silence. I pushed a janitor's cart carrying a mop and a bucket down the fourth-floor hallway. I wore a green maintenance uniform. The brim of my cap was pulled low, hiding half of my aging face. I had just crossed the court's 100-yard boundary. If I were caught, I would be heading straight to jail. But the shield of a father would not allow me to retreat. I stopped outside Ethan's intensive care room. The security guard hired by Victoria was sitting across the hall, absorbed in his phone. I coughed softly and pretended to scrub a stain from the floor near his feet. Logan had helped me disrupt the floor's camera system for exactly 5 minutes. I quickly pulled a small spray bottle from my pocket. A thin mist drifted into the air in front of the guard. A high-concentration benzodiazepine sedative would take effect within 10 seconds. The guard let out a long yawn. His eyes closed. His head fell back. He was asleep. I immediately slipped into the room and locked the door behind me. The heart monitor beeped steadily in the darkness. Ethan lay there with tubes and wires running across his body. His face was pale. His breathing was weak beneath the oxygen mask. I looked at the sedative bag feeding into his IV line. Damn her. Victoria had instructed the doctors to increase the dosage to keep Ethan in a deep coma. I quickly shut off the flow of the sedative. From inside my jacket, I pulled out a bag of pure saline solution that I had prepared earlier. I replaced her poisonous medication. Gently, I patted my son's cheek. Ethan. Wake up, son. It's Dad. Ethan. 10 minutes passed. It felt like a century. The sedative gradually became diluted in his bloodstream. His fingers twitched. A faint groan escaped his lips. Slowly, he opened his eyes. His gaze was clouded with confusion. Dad, why are you here? The court said you were crazy. I removed his oxygen mask and leaned close. Then I pressed play on the video stored on my phone. On the screen, Victoria was calmly crushing poison and mixing it into his smoothie. Ethan stared. Tears of pain and betrayal streamed from the corners of his eyes. His body trembled from the shock. He did not want to believe what he was seeing. Why would she do this to me? I loved her with all my heart. I gripped my son's thin shoulders. My eyes were steady, strong. I spoke the words I had carried inside me for a long time. Right now, you're a soldier in a war you never knew you were fighting. But you carry the Freeman name and nobody is allowed to put chains on you. Ethan looked at me. Something changed in his eyes. The weakness disappeared. In its place burned the cold fury of Freeman blood. He squeezed my hand. I understand, Dad. What do we do now? I smiled. The smile of a hunter whose trap was already set. You keep pretending to be unconscious. Tomorrow night at the gala, she'll bring paperwork to your hospital bed, or her attorneys will bring it and pressure you to sign away the company. That's when we deliver the final blow. But Ethan and I did not know that Victoria, driven mad by greed, had accelerated her plans. She did not wait until the following night. The moment I left the hospital, she entered the room carrying a dangerous syringe. She struck directly at the figure lying in Ethan's bed. But her deadly syringe pierced nothing more than a body pillow disguised beneath the blankets. Logan had secretly moved Ethan to a safe location just before she acted. Perhaps that was the moment she sensed that something was wrong with the plan she had spent so long building. At last, the long-awaited night arrived. At the Grand Plaza Hotel, brilliant spotlights illuminated the gala celebrating the 10th anniversary of Freeman Corporation. 500 guests from the upper class filled the ballroom in elegant attire. Crystal glasses clinked together. Champagne flowed. Music echoed throughout the grand celebration. Victoria stood at the center of the grand stage. She wore a blood-red evening gown. Even though cracks had begun to form in her plan, she still believed Ethan remained unconscious. Confidence radiated from every movement. Absolute power. Absolute arrogance. On the signing table lay the documents authorizing the sale of the company's controlling shares to a foreign corporation for $20 million. Victoria lifted a microphone. Her sweet voice echoed throughout the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, my husband Ethan Freeman is currently confined to a hospital bed and cannot be here tonight. However, it was his wish that I sign this agreement on his behalf and lead the company into a new era. She smiled. Thank you all for your trust and support. Then she lowered the pen toward the signature line. Suddenly, darkness. Every light in the ballroom went out. The enormous room fell silent. Confused whispers spread among the 500 guests. Victoria spun around in alarm and shouted into her radio. Where's technical support? What happened to the power? Turn the lights back on immediately. Then the giant 20-foot LED screen behind the stage flickered to life. But it was not a corporate presentation. It was the kitchen security footage. Crystal clear, every detail visible. Victoria appeared on the screen, calmly crushing white tablets before mixing them into her husband's smoothie. Gasps erupted across the room. Then the ballroom sound system thundered to life. A recorded conversation filled the air. Victoria's voice, Christian's voice, every word unmistakable. He's nothing more than a piñata filled with money. We can keep hitting it until the money falls out. I'll sign the order to remove life support. Shock exploded through the crowd. People rose from their seats. Some shouted. Others stared in horror. Disgusted eyes locked onto the stage. Victoria's face turned completely white. The pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. No, her voice cracked. This is fake. Shut it off. Security, turn it off right now. At that moment, the massive ballroom doors swung open. A single spotlight swept toward the entrance. The sound of rolling wheels echoed across the red carpet. Slowly I entered the room. I was pushing a wheelchair. Seated in that chair was Ethan. He wore an elegant suit. Color had returned to his face. His eyes were sharp as steel. Victoria staggered backward. No. She shook her head frantically. No, that's impossible. You're supposed to be unconscious. The ballroom fell completely silent. 500 people watched. Ethan slowly gripped the arms of the wheelchair. Then with all the strength left in him, he rose to his feet. Freeman blood carried him forward. Step by step, he climbed onto the stage and stopped directly in front of the woman who had tried to kill him. Without hesitation, he snatched the microphone from her hand. His voice rolled through the ballroom like thunder. You are fired from my life, Victoria. He stared directly into her eyes. The show is over. Immediately, 2 state investigators emerged from behind the stage curtains. Handcuffs snapped around Victoria's wrists. She screamed. She kicked. She fought wildly as officers escorted her away beneath the relentless flashes of hundreds of cameras. The truth had won. Justice had prevailed. But as Victoria was pushed toward the waiting police transport vehicle, she suddenly stopped struggling. She turned and looked directly at me. A strange smile spread across her face. Cold, almost triumphant. Old man, she said quietly, you think you saved him. My stomach tightened. Victoria's smile widened. Go home. Her eyes shifted toward Ethan. Open his safe. The ballroom seemed to grow colder. The truth inside will make you wish he had never been born. For the first time that night, I felt something far more unsettling than anger. Fear. Because Victoria no longer sounded like a defeated criminal. She sounded like someone who knew one final secret, and she had just buried that secret inside my son's name. Victoria's final threat had been nothing more than the desperate lashing out of a cornered animal. There was no dark secret hidden inside Ethan's safe. Inside were only an old family photo album and childhood pictures of my son standing beside me. Victoria's last attempt had been psychological warfare. She wanted to drive a wedge between father and son one final time. She failed completely. 3 weeks after the trial that shocked the city, I sat across from Victoria inside a gray interrogation room at the state prison. The elegant executive's wife was gone. Her hair was unkempt. The oversized orange prison uniform hung loosely from her frame. She stared at me with eyes filled with bitterness and hatred. Without hurry, I pushed a stack of legal documents across the cold metal table. Then I spoke calmly. You were willing to poison your husband for a few $1 million in company shares. Victoria said nothing. You chose greed. I tapped the documents. But there's something you never knew. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in her eyes. I continued. There was a trust fund worth $15 million in your name. Her face went blank. It was created by Ethan. She stared at me in disbelief. He established it in secret. The trust was designed to activate automatically after 5 years of a happy marriage. I paused. You were 1 month away. Victoria's eyes widened. Her gaze dropped to the paperwork. The numbers were real. Every dollar, every signature, every legal seal. Her entire body began to tremble. At that moment, she finally understood. Her greed had stolen everything from her. Her cruelty had destroyed her future. Slowly, she lowered her head onto the table. Then she broke down. The sound of her sobbing echoed throughout the bleak interrogation room. 20 years in prison without parole was a terrible punishment. But prison bars were not the harshest consequence she would face. The true punishment was realizing that she had thrown away genuine love and a fortune beyond her imagination because of selfishness. Greed remains the most powerful poison of all. It destroys the human soul long before it destroys a life. Several months later, peace finally returned. The gentle sounds of water lapped against the side of a small fishing boat. Ethan and I sat together on a quiet lake. Golden sunlight stretched across the calm surface of the water. The healthy color had returned to Ethan's face. The weakness was gone. He looked at me and smiled. For the first time in a long time, our family was whole again. The story of my family carries a lesson for all of us. Money and status can be tempting, but they are never worth sacrificing integrity, loyalty, or the people who truly love us. Betrayal always comes with a price. Justice may arrive late, but sooner or later it arrives. And when it does, it stands beside those who choose what is right. If you believe family is worth protecting at any cost, please like and subscribe for more stories about justice. And remember, a shield may become scratched and battered, but it never breaks.